So welcome to the T2 Hubcast with me, Martin Johnson.
And me, Tracy Roberts.
Good morning, Tracy.
Good morning.
How are you?
Marvellous.
Yeah?
Absolutely marvellous.
Good. It's been some time since we did a podcast. I can't even remember the last one we did together.
Oh, I can't either. But I know it's been a while because we've been like passing ships, haven't we? So
We have. Well, it's good to spend the morning with you. We've chosen a really interesting topic for today's pod.
Yeah.
The topic is dynamic subordination. And first sort of come to us in the last 12 months as a result of us booking Rich Davini on the T2 Leadership Retreat in 23.
Yeah.
For those of you who haven't seen or don't know, Rich Davini is a former Navy SEAL commander. He led SEAL Team 6, also was in charge of the training ops for the SEALs. And he's written a book called The Attributes.
Which is fabulous.
Yeah. If you haven't read it, buy it, read it. It's fantastic. He's taken 25 optimal performance attributes of Navy SEALs and he dissects them one by one and talks about how they play out both individually and in teams.
Yeah.
And then right at the end of the book, and just sort of come into this theme of dynamic subordination, right at the end of the book, after exploring all of the attributes and how they play out in their different groups, etc., he then talks about like dynamic subordination being the ultimate team sort of strategy. And what he talks about is we've all got different attributes. We're all high, low, and moderate with different attributes, which makes us all wonderfully weird and different. Yeah. So understanding your attributes as a team is important. And then and only then can dynamic subordination play out, which is the concept of, like when we use the phrase if you've ever been on courses or you've ever talked about team building and you've ever used the word team dynamics.
Yeah.
A lot of people talk about team dynamics.
Yeah.
I think this encapsulates it perfectly. Once you understand the personality types, the traits and the characteristics of each individual in a team.
Yeah.
Then the concept of dynamic subordination plays out when the team get really good at recognizing which person in the team needs to step up and lead or contribute significantly in an endeavor based on their skills and attributes. Yeah. So it takes away the leader's got to make all the calls and decisions and they're the ones who are leading. Actually, in a team of 10, for example, any one of those people can step up in a scenario if their expertise, knowledge, skill sets and attributes lend itself to the situation more than others. Yeah. And quite often that's not the leader.
No, I think if you know each other well, you get to know those things, don't you? And it's like an unspoken thing, particularly in an exec team, or it should be in a high performing team, because people will naturally look at someone in the room when there's a question being asked sometimes. But it's having the confidence. That's the problem, isn't it? It's creating that confidence for people to feel like they can do that, and that doesn't happen naturally. That's what I would say. Yeah. We have to work on it, don't we? We have to figure each other out. We have to set the ground rules. Yeah. And know when we're all in a good place to do that.
Yeah, for sure. The term dynamic subordination is interesting. I like it. And I can see people flinch at it in equal measure because the term subordination in some leaders will scare them.
Yes.
I.e., you have to become subordinate to your team member in a situation that might be quite important or quite critical to performance or whatever it might be. And depending on the profile of the leader, the personality of the leader, some might go, no, I love that. I love it when other people step up and empower people. And others might go, hang on a minute, I'm the gaffer.
Makes me look weak.
I'm the gaffer. Yeah. Aren't I supposed to have the answers to all of this?
Yeah.
So it's quite an interesting, it's difficult. It's not easy to achieve, is it? Depending on, I would say first and foremost, depending on the nature, the personality and the profiling of the leader.
Definitely. But I guess what's important about that is it probably does naturally happen in some situations with a leader. I think one of the lovely examples that Rich used in the book was around an aircraft pilot. If his mechanic came to him all of a sudden and said, I know better than you and there's something wrong with this plane, the pilot's not going to go, I'm in charge, I'm making the decisions, I'm going up anyway. And I thought, actually, if you put that into real life context, there are loads of times where you actually do that naturally. You will listen to someone who is your subordinate or whatever it might be. So I think maybe it just feels scary when you're applying that to the whole team rather than in like those specialist areas. But I thought that was quite funny because, yeah, you wouldn't exactly ignore that, would you? I think your wing's hanging off. No, I know better than you. I'm just going to take it up in the air, you know. So I think really probably we do apply this, but do we apply it to a whole team comfortably?
And you've hit on something there, because we could give loads of examples of like military or NHS. So in the pandemic, a CEO of the hospital was not making decisions on protocol through COVID. The head of infectious control was.
Yes.
Because they're the experts on infection control.
Absolutely.
The CEO is not going to be making all the decisions. They're going to be seeking counsel from whoever's in charge of infection.
They'll want dynamic subordination in that sense.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, but this brings me to my point, right? Because there's a lot of people listening to this who are not in the military, not in areas of expertise like the NHS with specific, like really drilled in qualifications around infection control or midwifery or whatever it might be. There is people listening to this who are in businesses, who are teams, sales teams, customer service teams, management, operations. And yes, in some of those functions in a business like finance or legals, there are a real specific set of expertise which you would, as a CEO, you would have to listen to your general counsel or legal on the the realities of a certain policy or legal document. That's very clear cut. And you would listen to your finance director on the state of the accounts or how to do a P&L or whatever it might be.
Of course, yeah.
But then, so you have these clearly defined areas of expertise where dynamic subordination plays out. And it is so clear because of the role. And the role. Yeah. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But then you have, let's go to a more ambiguous type environment. So you're in a visionary ideas meeting around a new product or service.
Yeah.
You've got ops in there. You've got marketing in there. You've got the CEO in there. You've got someone else who's just really creative in there. And you're now trying to solve problems, or you're trying to innovate or generate ideas.
Yeah.
And it's not as obvious who's stepping up.
Yeah.
So does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. And I guess sometimes there is a little bit of grey area there, and there's got to be a level of control maybe as well, because someone's going to have to make the final decision at the end of the day. But that is part of dynamic subordination, right?
It is, but I think that's where what's really good about the work we've done with Rich and how we understand what we do here at T2 with teams is that's where the attribute should play out. So let's say there's not clear cut expertise. Let's say there's me, you, Lydia, and Claire in a room, and we're talking about something that doesn't entirely fall into anybody's wheelhouse. Wheelhouse is like anybody's area of expertise. It's a military thing.
That's what I say. We're going back to military terms.
What we need to do in that sense, instead of going, right, who's got the expertise and the knowledge in this area, it's like, who's got the right attributes and characteristics to probably drive this? Is it more of a fact-based thing? Is it more of a problem-solving thing? Is it more creative?
Yeah.
Does it need that visionary end game defining? Whatever, and then we'd probably work out between ourselves who was best from an attributes perspective to lead that. I think that's where it plays out, doesn't it?
Yeah, it definitely does. It's like, what attributes do we need at this point to achieve X? So it might be, I don't know, building a team. Let's look at the team as a whole. Where have we got nuances? Where have we got, I don't know, an increased amount of certain attributes? Is that a problem? You know, because when we come to decision making, is that going to mean that we're kind of coming at it from a groupthink perspective? And then when it comes to, I don't know, wider project, do you have a scope of sort of attributes available to you? Will that help you have a broader brush, or do you need a huge type of one attribute in one specific area? So I think it depends on what it is and what you try to achieve at the end, essentially, doesn't it?
What's your thoughts on if two people have very similar strengths, knowledge, and attributes, and both want to step up in the same situation?
Oh, that's a tough one. It happens all the time, though, doesn't it?
It does.
Are you talking about you and me, by the way?
It does. It happens. No, and there's a lot of customers where we do, like where we do a leadership team and we do their profiling, and instantly you spot two characters in the room they're profiled the same, they're wired the same, they're both extroverted, they're both dominant, and you're like, ooh, it's interesting to see how that plays out in second. You are going to have these situations where you want dynamic subordination to exist, but it's not always as clear as cut as everybody's different. Sometimes you have a lot of similarities, and two people
that can be worse. Yeah. No, I agree, and I think there's going to come generally be quite a lot of environments where you'll have a lot of people that are similar. If you think of back to that example of sales would be a great example. There's going to be people with similar attributes, because if they're drawn towards that job, of course, naturally, there's probably going to be an abundance of probably a bit of cunning in there. I'm thinking maybe a bit of narcissism even.
Well, funny enough, I did my full attributes test again this week.
Yeah.
I've sent my results to Rich. He put smiley face first. Secondarily, he put this is great, and when we meet, I can talk you through it. I had 3 categories: low, moderate, and high.
Yeah.
I was low on 2 attributes. I was moderate on probably about 8.
Okay.
And then I was high on about 9.
Okay.
Now, the ones I was high on were things like all the drive attributes.
No shot.
Mental acuity. Things like accountability, decisiveness, self-efficacy.
Yeah.
All of those I was incredibly high on. I was moderate on then things like resilience, returning to baseline after a trigger, which I would agree with. I don't always find it easy to return to base. I was moderate on selflessness. Stop laughing. I was moderate on so I was moderate on these lot, and then I was low on 2, and I was I was low.
What were they?
I was low on empathy.
Really?
The ability to feel what other people are feeling.
But you openly say that.
Yeah.
And that's but you take a different approach to it, which I still think is just as effective.
When you see it in black and white, and it's like, I can't feel feelings, or am I a robot? So I'm low on empathy, which I do agree with. I do struggle to feel what other people are feeling, and I know that. And I was low on open-mindedness, the ability to take other people's opinions.
But that's because you're a visionary and you like to.
Well, I think if you look at
it's not a negative. That's not a negative kind of outward approach to you. It's not. You don't do it on purpose. It's just because you're so driven and you're an entrepreneur, for God's sake. You've had to think for yourself.
But if you think about it as well, if you're really strong on drive, decisiveness, self-efficacy, all of that, then that's going to lend itself to not being as open-minded, because you sort of going, no, I'm okay, thank you. I know what I'm doing and I know where I'm going.
Yeah.
So
but then being conscious of that as your role in your business and things like that change, that's still eye-opening to you, right? To think of it like that, to go, right, now I've seen that, I'm conscious of it.
And I guess so the reason I'm telling you this is because, again, if you did yours, you'd have your low, moderate and high list, and so would everybody in the team. And then knowing that if I go into a scenario with my team, with you, and let's look at our managers, I go into the management meeting with you guys, knowing that I'm low on empathy naturally and open-mindedness is really important for me. Because if in a meeting someone is clearly distressed and I feel like they're making a mountain out of a molehill, or I feel like it's negative, or I feel like it's this, maybe that's my lack of empathy to the situation that's driving that, and maybe then that's going to make me less open-minded to engage with it. So then I'll fall straight back into, look, let me go to my strengths, decisiveness. This is where we're going. This is what we're doing. And do you know what? There might be a case in dynamic subordination where actually we need me to do that. Yeah.
Sometimes people are making a mountain out of a molehill.
But there also might be a scenario where, Martin, we don't need you to be decisive here and show your self-efficacy, and we actually need to brainstorm some ideas here. We need to, and actually you might not be best to do that.
Yeah.
So I think that's an example of what we're talking about. It's really important that you know what you're low, medium and high on.
Yeah, definitely.
So you can spot it and allow yourself to step back and other people to step up in certain scenarios. But it's still very difficult at times,
Yeah, of course it is. But I think like anything we do, even with print tools, it's awareness, isn't it? And the good thing about a lot of the attributes is if we know, we can work on it and we can do stuff and we can tune into it a little bit more, and we can actually help hold each other's by being open to that. And remember that leadership and team ability elements can only be measured by other people, really, officially, can't they? So we can say, hey, I'm full of empathy, and other people might disagree.
Exactly. And well, that's it. And I've always had a feeling that it's easy for anyone to say I've got empathy, and it's hard for someone to sit there who is a CEO and a founder of a human performance business and say I don't have empathy. But actually, I'm better for knowing that I'm low on it. It doesn't mean I don't have it, by the way. Every human being.
You just approach it differently, don't you?
I'm slightly low on it.
Yeah.
So anyway, I text Rich this, and I'm going to read his response to you because I asked him. I said, given that I'm low on empathy and open-mindedness as attributes,
yes,
how can I improve them? What situations can I put myself in?
Okay.
Because it's not a skill. You can't just go in a classroom and learn to be empathetic. You can't learn.
And that's what distinguishes them, isn't it? You can't learn it and can't be taught it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, but you can improve upon your attributes through putting yourself in situations which test them and allow you to harness them and hopefully improve them.
Measured risk,
But I said to him, how the hell do you improve?
You have to just go find loads of sad people.
Yeah, how do I manufacture a feeling or for another person's perspective, you know? And I always talk about the difference between compassion and empathy, don't I? And I say, well, I've learned to be compassionate, which says I can't feel what you feel, but I can certainly put myself in your shoes and appreciate it.
Yeah.
So he said, one of the ways to improve empathy is to find an opinion or perspective that, he was talking about himself. Yeah. To find an opinion or a perspective that he vehemently disagrees with.
Okay.
And then he forces himself to get to a point where he can empathize with them or it.
Okay.
The exercise alone is working on your open-mindedness also.
Yeah, that's a good way to do it.
It's almost like, but it makes you shudder when you think about it. It's like, pick something that you fundamentally disagree with, right? That you just cannot even fathom a conversation around.
Yeah.
And force yourself to not give your point of view, to put yourself in the other person's perspective and try and empathize with how they've come to that position.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we play that out, don't we, with de Bono's hats a lot. And it's a similar thing. You think of the complete opposite hat and only think of it from that perspective. And as much as it's really difficult, if you're a data-driven person and you're in the soft and fluffy yellow category going, what are the possibilities? You know, all of a sudden things shift a little. And I think it's pretty similar. The difference is you're digging into emotions. And just digging into emotions and trying to express emotions can sometimes be difficult for some people, but trying to sit in it. And I think that's a really good piece of advice. I think
the reason, coming back to dynamic subordination, if I can do that time and time again, then the likelihood is I might push my empathy and open-mindedness up a little, which is absolutely going to allow dynamic subordination to play out more with the team.
Yeah.
Because I won't have this temptation to go, I don't feel that, or you're making a mountain out of a molehill, or let me just tell you what we need to do. Right. So I'm very conscious of that, but the leader's position in dynamic subordination playing out it takes everybody, but I would suspect the person in the position of command or rank, their role in it is incredibly important.
Well, yeah, because they've got to have a holistic view of themselves and the team, haven't they? I think they've got to have a sense of, do I understand everyone's attributes as well? So I think that's important. I think the main thing here is, how do we get people to that point? I think one of the words we landed on from the book was trust, right? We've got to have really, really good levels of trust to allow that openness. And we don't always see that with every team we work with. So that can be quite tricky, I guess.
Trust is the foundation of all high performance in teams, isn't it? If you trust the intent of the individuals around you and you trust that the team are going in the right direction and we've all got the same thing in mind, and we trust that we've got each other's best interests at heart.
That's the key.
Even if it's going to be difficult conversation or it's going to be a difference of opinion, trust that it's for the greater good. I think that's really important, isn't it, for this playing out? And I don't think the leader still sets the foundation for that and builds that trust and creates an environment for the trust.
Definitely the environment. Yeah, 100%. And then also, considering what that map looks like with, from an attributes perspective, have you got a dominance in any areas? Is there a complete empty space in some? And how can you play for the right game that you're in? So that I always explain, like a football game, you're not going to play the same team every single week. You're going to use different kind of sort of I don't know, you're going to get your striker
Players,
out 1
skill
week,
sets,
skills, yeah, things like that. So I think it's the same with attributes, and that is definitely the leader's job to kind of be at the top and look down and make sure there's diversity in that team. And if there isn't, think about ways to create that maybe and bring more attributes out. Because one of the key things about the attributes is that not everyone is naturally showing you every attribute that they've got within their system, so to speak. If you've always got someone sat at a desk crunching numbers, then you're not going to necessarily see many of the drive attributes as an example. So that's when that controlled risk taking comes in. You know, what projects can you get people involved in? What conversations? And I think that's another thing that the leader has to be really good at, is spotting those opportunities. Otherwise, we have people, and we see this all the time, people in roles that have been in there a long time and they don't feel very fulfilled, pushed. Some people leave a job, go to a new job and go, wow, I didn't even realize I was going to be good at this, because they're put into a new situation and they thrive because someone took the risk. They pushed them out of their comfort zone a little bit because they saw something. There was a little glimmer there and they went, right, I'm going to put that person in there. And I think for me, that's where a leader can really come into themselves, because it's not just about you controlling your attributes. It's about you spotting them in other people and teasing them out a little bit, even if that person doesn't think it's possible, because sometimes it is.
The next T2 Leadership Retreat will take place on the 7th to the 9th of May 2024. To book your place on the ultimate leadership development experience from the People Performance People, or for more information, please visit www.trans2performance.com.
So let me put you on the spot here then. I've talked a bit about mine. Let's look at our team dynamic.
Yeah.
Where dynamic subordination could play out well.
Mm-hmm.
So where do you think your attributes, where do you think, like in our dynamic, let's say me, you, and the other managers, where do you think it would be appropriate for your attributes to come to the top and mine to step back and the other step back, and vice versa?
I think that's a really great question, because funnily enough, the two that you're lowest in were two of my highest. So I think that's why this works. And I think we know when that's the right thing to do. I also think there's a couple that we're very similar on. You're probably, when it comes to grit, one thing that came back, because I was reasonably high on all the grit attributes as well. We're very similarly wired, obviously. But one thing that came a little bit lower for me was courage, which I was actually quite surprised. It was mid. And when I questioned it, I realised that maybe it's because I'm less of a controlled risk taker than you. You've had to be a risk taker to build a business, right? For me, I've always been in an organisation. I'm not very good at taking risks financially, things like that. And it's always because I worry about my family rather than just me, if that makes sense. So that goes back to my unconscious motivators, actually, if you think about it. I don't like to take risks. So I think there's a few that we're pretty similar on, and maybe that's why sometimes we kind of need to take that approach of stepping back and thinking, okay, who needs to make the call here? Which I think we're pretty good at, to be fair. Empathy and selflessness came up quite high for me. And I'm trying to think what else. Humour was quite high. Yours is probably quite high as well.
Mine was moderate on humour.
Oh, was it?
Purely because I think my view on it was when it was moderate, which says I've got it, but I think
there's a line.
I also think when I'm so driven and I've got high levels of decisiveness, self-efficacy, drive, courage, I can't lighten up because I'm so intense I'm focused.
Yeah.
Whereas, but I think then if I'm in my calm, like sort of baseline self, then absolutely I can bring humor into it. But it was moderate for me. I resonate with that with you. I think, I understand why I think courage and resilience are slightly lower in you.
I did question it because I was like, hang on a minute, I've taken so many risks in my life.
Courage is really high in
me.
me. So I'm courage, narcissism, and cunning. Really
of course they were.
Really high in me.
Cunning was moderate for me.
Yeah.
Narcissism was very low, obviously.
Yeah, my narcissism was off the scale.
But it does show that's why this works. And we're a very, very small difference in our prints, aren't we? But it just shows that actually from an attributes perspective, there is a little bit of you can feel some of that content in your print.
Well, this is why it links to print, because you're an 8-2, which is to be strong and self-reliant and to
needed and appreciated.
To be needed and appreciated, which has the humanistic, collaborative humans first. I'm strong and self-reliant, but I'm to succeed and achieve. It's like goal first, right?
Yeah.
So that's why where the 2 and the 3 is where it plays out differently. And I think, if anything, we would struggle with dynamic subordination when the 8s are at play.
Yeah, and that's what I was just thinking. Grit and stuff still
Yeah.
reasonably high for me. Mental acuity was high for me. I think the only thing that was medium on that was actually, I'm trying to think. I think it was compartmentalization, which I thought was a bit weird because my task switching was quite high, because it has to be. I'm juggling so many things. So it did make me, what it did make me do was question a few things.
But so I see that in you. You're very strong on task switching.
Yeah.
And
But I do like to finish things.
But I don't think you do compartmentalize. As in, this is what I mean.
I do in personal situations, but not when it comes to work. I know it sounds weird.
Because you don't want to drop a ball or say no.
Yes,
you
exactly.
don't chop up and chunk a number of things into priorities. You want to do everything.
Yeah.
And just task switch your way through
And I'm pretty good at it.
You are pretty good at it. But even your bucket fills.
Oh, yeah.
And I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I understand how that plays out. But again, dynamic subordination played out with us yesterday, I'd like to think, where, again, James came back to my desk. I'm delivering something to a client next week. I've taken some of the standardized models from our day 3 pillar.
Yeah.
I've edited it and done my own thing, because that's
Done
what
his
I do.
MJ edit.
That's what I do. I just lower above myself, and I've created like something else out of it. And then I'm like, James, come over here. Come and look at this. This is what I've done to this slide, and you need to be doing this, this, and this. And you went, excuse me, like in a really sort of polite way, you went, excuse me, can we not? It was like, and I was like, what do you mean? And it was like, but that's not really the model, how we've standardized it, and it's not what we've taken from the direct source. Yeah. And I'm like, okay, forget about that, James. Forget that, James. And James went, okay, and walked off. And it was a little bit like, I mean, I believe if dynamic subordination wasn't playing out, then I'd have gone, no, T,
that's what we're doing.
That's what we're doing. And you'd have gone.
And equally, yeah, it's creating a situation where you can have conversation, isn't it? It's not about, that's not the way we do it. It was like, because then some of my comments were like, maybe we can look at the model again and pick some better words, and you were like, no, actually, if you explain it, it's fine. Now you've explained it, it's fine. And I think in some organizations, there definitely wouldn't be an opportunity to do that. And there'd probably be people with a lot of pent-up aggression.
Well, listen, it's also
aggressiveness.
It's also you holding me to account on what I want, which is we want to have consistency in the delivery. Yeah. We want every consultant to be aligned with what we're doing.
Yeah.
So if I'm taking a segment out, enhancing it and tailoring it, and then giving it to one consultant, I'm creating inconsistency.
Of course, So, but that is not the intent. For you, you're just using your cunning to think of a different way to get something across, right?
And also then your response where you went, well, maybe we will revisit it and look at it. And if we're going to do it, we'll do it to all consultants and update the materials.
Yes. Yeah.
Do it properly rather than dropping it in James's, dropping it to James now, and he's got a different deck.
So that was all playing out. Yeah, no, I totally get that.
So dynamic subordination works, where we have a good understanding of what each team member's characteristics look like, what their skills and experience looks like, and more importantly, what their attributes are.
Yeah.
And we recognize when it's appropriate for those people to step up and lead, take control, or be the main influence on the outcome.
Definitely.
And having worked with thousands of teams over the years, I think we see very few who truly, truly foster this and get it right. The military do, because of the nature of what the military is, because of the clarity in the hierarchical structure and the respect for that hierarchy. But also in the military, everybody is a specialist in their area. You are a radar specialist or electronics warfare specialist or a weapons specialist and therefore if you're the captain of the ship, you're not a specialist in any of those areas. So you rely on those people to step up.
But it comes back to that competency and consistency, doesn't it? Because, if I'd have told the captain to completely turn the ship because I picked up this one radar that was probably this aircraft that probably had this missile that could probably do this thing, and he didn't have that ability to say to me, oh, okay, I trust you. He'd have been like, it wouldn't have worked. But I think leaders could probably think about what they can do to build, and we have these discussions all the time, how can you build that ability to read each other's attributes, so to speak, know who to allow to speak in the room, and the competency levels is super important. But also I just think it's understanding what people do in the organisation as well. Sometimes I don't think we spend enough time actually getting to know what is required to be a good person in that job, or And then we're only really referencing it from our own set of attributes and what we see. And we don't actually know what people have got in them if we don't push them into other situations. So, yeah, I think it could be a good exercise for people to think about it from a roles perspective, don't you? So people in your organisation now, as it stands, in this particular team, what attributes are required? And maybe that needs to be revisited every so often. Depends on the size of the business, your purpose, your vision, your mission, all those things. And then when you go into a project, probably another good time to do it. Okay, to get this done, what are we going to need?
Yeah.
Are we going to need these attributes here and those attributes there, or do we need a clear run of similar things all the way through? Because some projects might only require a handful of those things. They might not need the diversity because it's very specific. But the reality is, the more diverse the team, the more chance you've got of, in the long term, if anything adverse comes up, you being able to deal with it. Because someone's got it in their locker. That's the way you've got to think about it. Maybe a bit of a watch out for leaders as well, though, if you're employing people too similar to you, if that makes sense. But it's a common problem, isn't it?
Yeah, if you've got a team of 6 people and you're all carrying similar styles, personas and attributes, then you're all going to want to step up in the scenarios. And then when you've got a scenario that doesn't lend itself to any of you, you're going to have a gap, a massive gap. Also, I would say leaders out there who like me, are used to having high levels of self-efficacy, who believe in themselves, who are driven, who are decisive, who, want to just set the tone and crack on. Yeah. Don't be deterred by this, because it doesn't mean to say dynamic subordination doesn't mean that you don't get to step up and lead sometimes. You're part of it. Yeah. And actually there are plenty of occasions where in let's look at this in T2, where absolutely you and the other managers look at me and go, this is your bag. This is you. We need you to tell us what you need, or we need you to step up and make this decision. And quite a lot of that, when I think about it now, is around that courage and risk and make the call. And are we going to spend this amount of money and roll the dice? Are we going to go forward and put two new headcounts into the organisation?
And you have to make that decision. It's on your head completely. So
that's where it's clear. And then other stuff is where it doesn't lend itself to that. But for example, we've got to CPD all the courses, standardize the delivery and the content, make sure we've got consistency, have competency frameworks for all consultants to make sure that we're upholding standards. All of that is not my bag. No. But it's your bag, because it plays to that helping human beings and making sure that you can develop others. Yeah. But also use your creativity around creating this stuff. So I guess definitely we're ad-libbing, but we are practicing what we preach, I think. And you won't get it right all the time, because going back to some of the other stuff, if someone's pissed off or challenged or in shadow state, whether it's you, me, someone else, it won't work as an effective as it should do. So there'll be times where I might be in shadow, be irritated, frustrated, and I'm probably not allowing dynamic subordination to play out in that moment. But maybe there's a case to just humour me and bring me down, and then we'll go back at it another time. And in that situation, your awareness probably pops in later, and then you come and have a conversation with people. So I think allowing that space and that forgiveness as well, and I think that's a really good point. I think people just need to, I guess in this organisation we're probably more privileged in the fact that we get to see all this stuff and read all this stuff and see it playing out on a daily basis. In other organisations, we can become a bit blinkered because we just see things the way that the organisation sees things, or we put people into boxes. And that's probably where dynamic subordination and the attributes, can teach you a few things. It's not about, for that role, you need these things and you just stay in that box. It's about how can we create opportunities to see new attributes come to life? How can we hone attributes for as you move up the leadership ladder? If you're moving sideways, what needs to change to make you really great at this new role, as an example? So leaders' responsibilities are to spot little glimmers and think, what can I do with that? But also to train for the unknown a little bit sometimes, throw some tasks in there that might just challenge people. And sometimes, let's be honest, goes back to our delegation dilemma, you will give someone too much because you've maybe believed in them a bit too much. But that's okay, because that's learning. And I think the final point I was going to say on this is just because what you can't fall into the trap of is going, right, I've done some testing and some introspection and I know what I'm low, moderate and high on.
Yeah.
And as I've already shared on this podcast, I'm relatively low on empathy and open-mindedness. So instead of me going, right, so they're my low attributes. So whenever we need empathy and open-mindedness, I'm going to go to Tracy or Lydia or whoever. Yeah. What I am doing that, but what I'm also doing is going, how can I improve my empathy and open-mindedness over time? Because I'll never be high on it naturally. But if I could push it from low to moderate, or just improve it somewhat, so I can start to, so I could start to deploy that a little bit more when it's needed, then that's what I should be doing. I shouldn't just be going, right, I'm low on them, so I'm just going to park them I'm never going to be it.
No.
Yes,
that's kind of lazy dynamic subordination, I guess.
Oh, yeah. It's like
they'll deal
devoid of accountability subordination.
Yeah.
I'm going to say, right, how can I become more open-minded? And here's the caveat to that. I'm sure there's times where I'm incredibly open-minded when I'm in best self.
Of course, yeah.
And when it doesn't carry a certain, I don't know, risk or whatever it might be.
Yeah, yeah.
The time for open-mindedness, though, is when I'm feeling a bit uneasy.
Yes.
I'm feeling a little bit unsure. I'm in shadow.
Yeah.
And that's where I'll really struggle with it.
Yeah.
So working on your low and moderate attributes is still something we should be doing.
And that's still you putting yourself into some situations thinking, at this time, my open-mindedness is not apparent, but I'm going to really dial it in today because I think it might actually help me to push myself a little bit here.
Yeah.
And I think, if more people could be aware, if you just think back to the work we do with print, this links in perfectly. Some of these words even pop up in your print profile. So it gives you a hint to your value system, which is where a lot of this comes from. And if you can connect with those things and think, okay, these things I think I'm naturally higher on, and there's some of these words don't exist in your print profile as an example, it gives you an indication sometimes, doesn't it, on the things that you maybe just need to be a little bit conscious of. And sometimes it is just a bit of a gut feel, a gut instinct, generally layering into your value system and what's important to you and also what you enjoy. That's the other thing. If you enjoy something that links to one of these attributes, then the reality is you're probably going to be succeeding and they're going to be quite high up on those dials as well.
Well, you just linked into the final point to wrap this up, that if you think about like when we do psychological safety work with teams, you've mentioned trust already.
Yeah.
The other axis on psychological safety is freedom to contribute.
Of course.
So dynamic subordination, what's the value of it? Why are we talking about it now? Because if you absolutely get this right and you're a leader or a team who embraces dynamic subordination and you allow people to step up with their skill sets, their experience, their attributes and contribute, then you are going to build trust within the team, but you are going to create freedom to contribute.
Of course you are. Yeah.
And when freedom to contribute meets high trust, you get psychological safety.
Yeah.
And when you're psychologically safe in that team and you feel like you're making a difference, you're going to be more fulfilled. You're going to stay around longer.
Yeah.
You're going to go above and beyond for the team.
Yeah.
All of the metrics, the outputs that we say we want from people in our organizations are going to go through the roof
100%.
if we allow dynamic subordination to play out, because that will achieve high trust, high freedom of contribution, and ultimate psychological safety. And I think that's why it's important. But remember, leaders,
you're in the mix.
You're in it as well.
Absolutely.
It doesn't mean that you have to subordinate to everybody all the time. There are times when your qualities of a leader, the reasons you've been put in that position, right, they're going to have to step up and you're going to have to step up. And there'll be plenty of those times.
Oh, 100%, yeah.
But there'll also be a lot of times where you're not the right person for this situation. Or you're not the most optimal person for the situation. That's the difference, isn't it? Because I think any leader, any person would make a decision and figure something out if they were pushed. But are you the most optimal person for this situation is the question, isn't it?
Yeah, that is a really great question. And I think a good point to land on.
T, I enjoyed that.
Likewise.
If you've got any questions on this, you can get in touch with us. We're going to produce some more content around this. We are currently talking with Rich and the attributes around how we deploy this in the UK. So stand by, watch this space for comms around how we can actually come in and do some work on your team, what attributes you have, how dynamic subordination could play out for you as a team. Yeah. That's coming in the future.
Definitely read the book.
Read the book.
Or listen to the audiobook. I quite enjoyed it, actually.
Yeah. plenty of podcasts. You can also listen to the podcast or the video of Richie's session with myself at the 2023
That's right, yeah.
leadership retreat. But just think about it. Think about your current teams. Think about if this is playing out now. And yeah, dynamic subordination can be a game changer for sure. Tracy Roberts, thank you very much.
No, thank you.
And we'll be back shortly with another T2 Hubcast.
Hi listeners, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the T2 Hubcast. If you did, please consider leaving a 5-star review on your favourite podcasting platform. It only takes a minute and your feedback is greatly appreciated. Reviews help other people find the show and learn about the amazing topics we cover. Additionally, please turn on notifications so you never miss an episode. And finally, please subscribe or follow the T2 Hubcast if you haven't already. Doing this means that you'll automatically receive new episodes as soon as they're released. Thanks so much for your support.